Hi, I'm Kyle Justice.
And I'm Pat Roy.
And we're the
Creation Guys. Woo!
Woohoo! Pat, when we came into the studio this morning, I noticed some, really weird thing across the top of your car.
Oh, yeah. It's a rocket launcher.
What? Really?
Yeah. Where do you keep your rocket
a Saturn V rocket launcher? I mean, everyone keeps one on their car, right?
It's really cool. It launches soda bottle. And the reason it's on our car is because we were just down in California this last week.
Yeah.
We were doing some hands-on workshops. We do a lot of hands-on workshops with homeschool groups. And
awesome.
So we had a homeschool co-op. Sarah Brown, thank you so much for having us there in Meadow Vista, California.
Yeah.
It was cool. A bunch of kids showed up, and we talked about how the heavens declare the glory of God.
Awesome.
And then we talked about some of the physics between thrust and combustion and rockets and how all that work. And then we ended up actually shooting off probably about 30 soda bottles.
Wow.
And this thing, it's really cool. A lot of people don't know, but if you take butane, do this at home.
Don't do this at home or do it
Well, get your parents' permission, all right? But if you put some butane, so basically here's what you do is you drink down the soda a little bit. Okay, and then you add some butane to the top. The butane will float on top of the soda.
Yeah.
And what's cool is if you turn the bottle over, by the way, when you keep it upright, the butane just floats on top. It doesn't do anything. But when you turn it over, the two of them mix, and then it causes the butane to flash boil, and then it just shoots out the top of the soda bottle, or at the bottom, I guess, depending on which way you.
Awesome.
And it'll shoot out of your hands. But we didn't want to do that with little kids because you don't want little kids hitting each other in the face. So we came up with this little tube, and you put the soda in there, and you put the butane, and then you pull this pin, and the whole thing rotates.
Awesome.
And then it launches right out of the top, and it really goes really high.
Yeah.
But to get it back home, we had to tie it to the top of our car, and I just haven't had a chance to unload a car yet. So we're driving around the freeways of Vancouver, Washington right now with this rocket launcher on tied to our car. I've noticed I've gotten some looks on the freeways.
Well, when the Department of Homeland Security, they called me the other day, and they're kind of wondering, who is this guy? Rocket launcher, really?
Nobody keeps their rocket launchers on top of their car, I tell you. It's just...
I wouldn't recommend you go down Pennsylvania Avenue near the White House.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Anyway, hey, if your group is interested in having us come and do a hands-on workshop, you can check us out at creationquest.net. There's one on there that says live presentations.
Awesome.
And we actually go out and do these hands-on workshops.
Yeah.
We do not only the rockets, but we'll erupt volcanoes. And it's not the baking soda and vinegar type of volcano. It's it's really cool. And we've got a bunch of other hands-on things that you can do too.
And I've seen Pat at work. It's amazing. He does an awesome job.
Thanks. It's so much fun. It's just fun to get kids together and see them just wonder at God's creation, right? Because you want to point it right back to God again, and it's been so much fun. Hey, Kyle, I want to be the first to say to you, Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day, Pat. Thank you.
I forgot to buy you some Earth Day presents.
Me too.
And
I forgot to buy myself some.
I don't think we want to go out and do Earth Day caroling this year. Earth Day is actually coming up on Monday.
Yeah.
So it's still a few days away, but Earth Day is coming up, and again, the world is going to be celebrating Earth Day. So
wow, the whole world.
The whole world,
yeah. Wow.
I don't think anybody gets off of work or anything.
Do they sing "We Are the World"?
I imagine they could.
Yeah, they could. Yeah.
Earth Day carols.
We care for the earth.
That's so funny.
You weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I'm totally shocked.
I can sing more, too. Come on, join me.
Can't sing. Well, the name of our little program here is called Backlot, and the reason we do that is because we bring out things from our backlot, people that we know and things and all that. So we've actually got somebody that's from our backlot today, right? That's joining us.
Yeah. Michael J. Oard, or best be known to me as Mike.
Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, you'll notice that Mike's lips are not moving with the picture we've got here. It's because Mike is actually joining us via phone. Mike, thanks for being here today to talk about Earth Day.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, now, I thought maybe we could start off by reading right from the scriptures because, as Christians, God calls us to be good stewards of what he's created, right? And so I think a lot of times people confuse that creationists are advocating not being good stewards, but we want to be good stewards of what God has created. But
well, and even when God created Adam, he told Adam, "Hey, go take care of this garden."
Right.
You know? So he's a steward, even at the beginning of creation.
Right.
God wants us to be good stewards of the earth.
Right, exactly. So, Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to take just a moment and read from the scriptures. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Awesome. For the wrath of God, okay, so this is Romans 1:18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that which when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imagination, and their foolish heart was darkened. Okay, pages stuck together. Yep.
On the air. You notice my heart, though, right?
There you go. Okay, so you've got to fill this awkward moment. Yeah. Here we go. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of God, of the uncorruptible God, into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God gave them up also to the uncleanliness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie. And here's what I think really applies to Earth Day.
Yeah.
And worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen.
Amen.
So it seems like what can happen here is that when we reject the Creator, we begin to worship the creation and not the one who made it. Mike, is that what you find to be true?
Yes. Yeah, they're very concerned with the condition of the earth and the environment, and that's what started Earth Day, which global warming is a big part of that, Earth Day.
Right. So now tell us about your background. You were a meteorologist, but you've also been in the creation movement for a long time. And so when it comes to things like global warming, that's something that you've actually spent a lot of time researching. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I've studied climatology and atmospheric science for over 50 years. I got a master's degree in atmospheric science from the University of Washington. So I studied that, and I've also studied the Ice Age and the flood from Genesis.
Very good.
Wow. So as far as the whole Earth Day, its main focus, is it to celebrate the Earth or to draw attention to the concerns, or are you how familiar are you with it?
I'm not too familiar with it. I know that they're concerned about various environmental issues, which global warming is one of those. And I must add that in all these areas, and there's several dozen of them, it's important to get the facts first, because some Christians and even secular people, they hear a good spiel by someone about how we got to save the earth by stopping global warming or some other environmental effect, and then they believe them too easy. But you need to get the facts. Some of these issues are significant and others are trumped up.
Yeah, now I would like to dive more into that, but before we do, I always think of this as kind of a clash of worldviews, right? If you believe in evolution and that it's been millions of years of evolution and man is at the pinnacle of evolution, then that would mean that we would be the smartest thing on Earth and that we would have to be the ones to protect the environment. But when you go back to a creationist worldview, you begin to realize that God created everything and that actually it's his job to sustain Earth. We want to be good stewards, but ultimately it's God himself that's the one that protects and takes care of things. That would also mean, from a creationist perspective, that there would be different systems on planet Earth that would actually take care of things like global warming, right? So there's a real difference between those two worldviews, isn't there?
Oh, yes. There's all kinds of what we call negative feedback systems in nature, that if some variable goes too far one way, other variables come in and cancel part of that or most of that out. Yes, there's a lot of those built into the climate of the Earth.
Well, going right into the global warming side, what's kind of being presented nowadays, and then what's kind of the reality?
Well, I read all kinds of stuff in Nature and Science and the Transactions of the American Geophysical Union, just pushing this global warming. And for my study of it, they're exaggerating a lot of this, and they make statements that are rather comical when you look at it. Like one statement was saying that pretty soon the only area for land that we can live on is Antarctica after the ice sheets melt. Eric Holder, when he's being confirmed in the Obama administration, said that by 2020, 1 billion people are going to die due to global warming. I hear statements like this all the time that are just either untrue or total exaggerations. But the reality is that I examine the facts of the issue, and the reality is that we are having a global warming, but it's only been about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880. Only 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The way they talk, it sounds like it's been 10 degrees Fahrenheit. But you can attribute probably about half of that to natural processes. We know that there's natural climatic fluctuations from effects of the sun, volcanoes going off, cycles in the ocean, and we also had the Little Ice Age between 1400 and about 1880, where all the glaciers in the world advanced. Before that, we had the medieval warm period when the Vikings colonized southwest Greenland. So we know that there's things, but you could probably do the correlations from the 20th century, probably say that half of this 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit is due to natural processes. So man's adding carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, but not the most powerful greenhouse gas. Water vapor is the most powerful greenhouse gas by far. Carbon dioxide is more of a minor greenhouse gas, and so adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere has probably only added maybe 0.8 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880. Now, what really panics the media and politicians and even some scientists is these models. They use these climate models where they double carbon dioxide in the model, leave all the other variables the same, run it out, and see what happens to the temperature. And these models give you anywhere from 3 degrees Fahrenheit to 11 degrees Fahrenheit warming with a doubling of carbon dioxide. And that's what scares them. But, the problem, I've worked with models. I've even developed a numerical model for my master's degree. And I know how models work. And they're imperfect. For one thing, they can't get clouds correctly. So they got to estimate these things. When you estimate, you add error. And they can't get infrared and solar radiation correct. They don't have the snow aging effect correct, or at least they didn't. I think they're doing better now. Also, ocean effects, they affect the weather. And ocean models have not been very good. They're getting better. So there's all these errors in these models. And that's why you get such a deviation from 3 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit with various models that they run. But nature's run the experiment for us most of the way. And I go by the observations of nature. If we add up all the greenhouse gases besides carbon dioxide, things like nitrous oxide and methane, and we translate those into carbon dioxide equivalency units, we've essentially increased carbon dioxide something like 85% already. 85%. And if man's contribution is only 0.8 degrees Fahrenheit, a doubling up to 100% would be approximately 1 degree Fahrenheit warming. So all those models are greatly exaggerated. Even the one that says 3 degrees Fahrenheit warming with a doubling of carbon dioxide is exaggerated. So that's the issue. It's not that severe. The models are greatly in error, and we actually have a lot of time to do more research to figure this out. And that's what I've been advocating for 30 or 40 years. Do more unbiased research. The problem is that much of the research is very biased. It's just, I read about it all the time, even in things not related to global warming, such as maybe about ice cores or paleoflora areas. They always seem to want to bring in global warming into the mix for some reason. So I hear it everywhere, but the public needs to get the facts, and you're not going to get it by a superficial reading of Discover magazine or the History Channel or Scientific American or some of the more popular scientific venues. But you got to dig deep, and there's a lot of skeptics like me that about man being the total cause of global warming, and that we must act now to save the planet. That's what they're trying to tell us. But we have lots of time. We don't have to panic, and we should be looking at the facts as good stewards of the earth.
Yeah, and I've even seen some scientific videos online where they're presenting evidence that, I believe it's carbon dioxide, the trees, there's like huge tree growth happening around the globe, kind of the checks and balances you were talking about. Have you gotten into researching that much?
No, I haven't. There's so many aspects to it, and I mainly focus my attention on the ice age and the flood. I run into these things like deforestation of the tropics. That was exaggerated, mainly because they didn't account for forestation, that forests do come back. And this was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, I think about 10 or 15 years ago, where a guy did use all these variables and said the decrease in the forests are only slight.
Yeah.
So you got all these things, and that's why you got to look at these things in depth, like tree growth. Yeah, we're increasing tree growth. We know the carbon dioxide helps tree growth, and also they're finding out that there's missing carbon dioxide. There should be more in the atmosphere than they think, and they're looking for maybe disappearing in the oceans somehow, because there's these balances between the oceans and the atmosphere with this carbon dioxide. So
yeah. Wow. Do the diatoms in the ocean use the carbon dioxide as well?
Yes, they do. Call them phytoplankton, and they will use it, and then they'll sink down to the bottom in the deep sea, and that's where carbon dioxide ends up. A lot of it going down to the deep sea. It's called, I think it's called the biological pump in that area of research.
Wow.
And some people might be confused about the idea that natural processes are about 50% or more of the current global warming. You can run correlations for the 20th century between the buildup of carbon dioxide, the temperature change in the 20th century, and the sunspot cycles for the 20th century. And the correlation is pretty poor with carbon dioxide increase, because we had a period of global cooling, actually, when carbon dioxide was going up fast. And that was between 1945 and 1975. We had a little global cooling, sea ice increased, books were published saying the new ice age is coming, and so forth. And because of that, and it doesn't correlate as well with increase in carbon dioxide. In fact, it seems to correlate more with effects on the sun, even though it is difficult to translate effects of the sun into climate change. That has the theories out, but so far they haven't nailed that down how that. It's just the correlation. And correlations are good unless there's a third or fourth variable that affect it. But in this case, there aren't any other variables that can affect these three variables that they plotted and correlated. So That's one evidence that natural processes are at least 50% of the global warming, as well as the little ice age and the medieval warm period that I've already mentioned.
So now we talked about this, and you went into some, but I was wondering if you could give us kind of generally, we talked about feedback systems where when the Earth gets a little too hot, it's like a thermostat, it kicks in and starts to cool down, and then when it starts to get too cold, then some things kick in and it starts to warm up again. Is that true? And if so, what kind of systems are out there that are helping to do that?
Okay, there's quite a few of them. Let's see, off the top of my head, one thing that comes to mind, if you heat up the ground a little more, you get more updrafts. We call it convection in atmospheric science, and you get more cloudiness. And cloudiness, the sun reflects a lot of the sunlight from the top of the clouds back to space. So if you increase cloudiness, you'll increase the reflectivity or albedo of the Earth, and that'll end up cooling the Earth. So that's a pretty strong feedback for temperature increase.
Okay, excellent. Now, Mike, not too long ago, I got to talk to somebody who is involved in the school system, and it was interesting. As I was talking, the whole global warming thing came up.
Okay.
I began to realize that this person was sincerely scared that this may be the end of the Earth. Matter of fact, we were talking about other issues, and they said, Pat, none of these other things matter. All that matters right now is global warming, because within a few years, if we don't do something, it is going to be the end of life as we know it right now. And boy, as I listen to the media and all of that stuff, it really seems like that's being pushed in the way that it is that unless there are radical changes, that we are in trouble because of global warming right now.
Oh, yeah. You hear all kinds of that stuff. Scare tactics that some people have said this is the most important issue to ever affect humanity. Some people have said statements to that effect. I said, more than World War I and World War II? What? Yeah. It's because people are misinformed. Even some scientists are misinformed that, and they believe these models, and a doubling of carbon dioxide is going to cause a huge increase in temperature. And they don't understand these models are imperfect, and these are just ballpark estimates. And they're exaggerated. The observations for the last 150 years or so say they're exaggerated by quite a bit. And I'll go along with observations versus model projections. Say they take these things too seriously, and that's what causes them to panic. And we need to act now to save the planet. It's just not necessary. We have plenty of time to do research and see if we can curb the increase in carbon dioxide, or work on alternative energy sources, which are right now very expensive. So, I mean, we should be working on these things, but we got to get the facts and realize that it's only been a slight warming, and models are greatly exaggerated. And probably the projection in the future would be only a slight warming. And there's natural processes, and we can survive it, and we can spend our money instead of hundreds of billions of dollars, which is supposed to be the cost of stopping global warming, I've read. We can use only a little part of that for mitigation, like if sea level rises too much in some areas, just put up a wall or a barrier like they have done in Holland. We can do things like that much cheaper than to throw hundreds of billions of dollars changing the electrical system, and it affect economies of the earth and probably result in massive global poverty.
Mike, I'm not I don't think either of us are huge, conspiracy, type people, but I've done some television documentary work on this issue and the green economy and so on. And it kind of struck me that there might even be something a little bit more going on where, people are trying to kind of control the whole narrative and control people in a certain sense of their actions and what they want them to do and not to do by scaring them into it. I'm not sure if you thought through that much at all, but it kind of is like, why? This is something to maybe consider as an option.
Oh, yeah. Since I've done a lot of reading in this area, I come across statements that would hint at that, even though I focus in on the actual data, the facts of the case. I do run into things like Jacques Chirac once said, "This is great for instituting global governance."
Right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And I've run across other statements to the effect that it'd be good for pushing for a one world government and a more equal distribution of wealth. I've run across a few of those statements. They're mostly under the radar.
Yeah.
In that a lot of people aren't aware that, possibly there might be a sinister conspiracy to use this, because there is a big push for one world government, and that kind of feeds into it very well.
Yeah,
and
it sure does.
I've run into those things, but I have not pursued it because I like to stick with the facts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, we are almost out of time. Can you put this in a Christian creationist context for us in about 30 seconds to a minute? What, as Christians, how do we deal with all of this?
Yes, it says in Genesis we're supposed to be stewards of the earth. To be stewards of the earth, we got to examine the facts, but we need to examine all the facts and look at both sides of the issue and not be swayed by popular presentations from Al Gore or someone like that. So we need to get the facts first before we decide to do anything about it.
Speaking of that, where do they go if they want to check out some more of your research about this? If somebody's watching and going, wow, I want to dig deeper into the research, where do they go to find out articles that you've written or other stuff?
Well, I got a DVD out from Creation Ministries International called "Is Man the Cause of Global Warming?" They can get that, and I have an article on the November 2017 Answers in Genesis website, updating some of the figures within the focus of those hurricanes that hit in 2017. So they can get information at those two sources on global warming.
Great. And you were also a guest on an Ice Age documentary.
Well, actually, Mike and I, we got together and we produced an hour-and-a-half documentary on what caused the Ice Age. Mike goes a lot into, was there multiple ice ages or one ice age? And he does a beautiful job rolling out the evidence that only the global flood could have caused the ice age after the flood ended. And it was so much fun working with you on that, Mike.
Where do they find it? Where do people find out about it?
Sure. Sorry, Mike. You go to awesomesciencemedia.com to look at that. It's on our online store at awesomescienceshop.com. Mike did a great job. Thanks, Mike, it was amazing to produce that with you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So. Right, matter of fact, I watched it, and it's really kind of cool. And what's fun is when we talk about things like global warming or the Ice Age or any of that stuff, we can go back and we can see how all of that fits with the Scriptures. In other words, the Scriptures really put things like that in context.
Yeah, I mean, if there was one thing that I would love to see, well, lots of things, but to see the Christians step up. And I know that there are some believers out there that they're not letting necessarily the secular side drive the narrative, and they're trying to come up and say, no, we're stewards of our environment. God's put us in charge, and they're leading that, and that's exciting to see.
Right. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being on the Backlot today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And you can check out our website. Again, you're awesomesciencemedia.com. Mine is creationquest.net, but when we come together, we're the Creation Guys, and you can check us out at
thecreationguys.com.
Thecreationguys.com. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in today.